Okay, we have another episode here for you on how to plan an awesome virtual event. We're taking you behind the scenes with tips and strategies, letting you know where we fell down and where we had our lessons learned, plus all the things we think we did fabulously. So learn from us, and I hope you really enjoy this. Okay. We are here with another episode of the Unstoppable Woman podcast. And today I am here with Sarah Hockett, who is my brilliant marketing manager on my team and works behind the scenes. And sometimes, like this, comes in front of the scene to help me share what we do to create this amazing business that we have. And today we're talking about how we pulled off putting on a virtual summit, our Unstoppable Woman Summit, in 3.5 weeks, and why we did it and what went right and what we would do differently, and pulling back the curtains on all the things so that you can learn from what we do in our business. So that's the context of what we're doing. And we're just going to riff back and forth about how we went about this. And I had this idea that it would be very interesting to not just have my perspective on how this played out, but Sarah's perspective. And she is always extraordinarily honest. So she's going to tell you when that was a cray idea that Amira had, and why did we do that? And like, you should have listened to me, and all those good things that we talk about behind the scenes. So welcome, Sarah, to the podcasting world that you're usually behind the scenes on. So happy to be riffing with you here today.
I always love a good riff, and like you said, this will definitely be a very honest conversation because that's what I do.
I love it. Why I hired you, among other things. Okay, so let's set the context here. We wanted to do, we had a June Unstoppable Woman Summit planned for Miami, and it was going to be in person. It was going to be fabulous. We had a ton planned for it. We had hotel contracts, the whole 9 yards, and we were going along in our merry fashion, and COVID came to us and to everyone. And so you have to pivot, you have to adjust. And for a while, we thought we're not going to do virtual because we had limited things. At first, we thought we would do virtual, and then it became like too big of a project. It was about creating something entirely different than what we originally were doing. And so we decided we'll cancel June and we'll just do November in person. And we have that set for San Diego, which we'll probably do virtually again. As By the way, we work from our homes, and there are dogs in the background. So if you're hearing dogs, they have things to say as well, and we love them dearly. So roll with us here, making it work. Okay, so we were working on that when COVID hit, and we wanted to course correct. We didn't have the vision on how to do that, so we decided not to do it initially and to just go for an in-person summit in November. But one of the reasons why we decided, or I decided, I wanted to do this, and I wanted to do it in June, which created some urgency because it was the beginning of June when I made this decision, was because I run a mastermind called the Spirit of Wealth, and part of that mastermind is the ability to come to the in-person live summits that we have and get the teaching, and they get a complimentary ticket. And even though we moved their special masterclass days to November, it still felt, and we added bonus teaching, and we were doing lots of things to augment the program. It still felt like we really wanted, people were chomping at the bit for the kind of experience that the summit that provides. So we wanted to make that happen, and we basically had 3.5 weeks to do it. Now, this is where I'm going to throw it over to you, Sarah, because at that point, I was like, okay, we can, ever the optimist. Okay, we can do this. We've done summits before. We're just shifting to virtual. That should be easier in many ways. Let's go, team, right? And how did you react to that?
Yeah, so let's back that up just a little bit. When you were like, "Hey, yeah, let's do this," we team-wide went to a 3-day virtual event on virtual events, where we learned a lot, definitely. But it was in the middle of that virtual event where you were like, "Hey, we can do this," and we were like, "Yeah, we can do this." And then we were working on a date, and you chose a date, and I have to be honest, I think I was over here breathing into a paper bag, saying, I don't know if we can do that in 3.5 weeks. Like, everybody's already has a lot on their plates because that's how we roll. And in my mind, coming from a nonprofit background where I've thrown a lot of large events like marathons and galas and all of that kind of stuff, I was just thinking timelines like I don't know how that's going to work, but we'll try.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So I had been sent a link to a training on virtual events, and it came from a client who saw it, and it was a company that I was very well familiar with. They're kind of big names in the transformational coaching industry and also in the nonprofit world for that matter, but they do a lot of big name events. So I thought, okay, let's learn from them. And I bought everyone on the team a ticket, right? So, well, not everyone, but the three people aside from myself who were going to be the most involved in putting on a virtual event to like, let's get educated, like let's see how people are doing this and figure out what we want to do, and how we're going to do this. And so it was on Skype going back and forth during that time, and Sarah was pretty much like, no freaking way, are you insane, right? Like if I was to read between the lines. And we ended up doing it anyway. So that's a little bit of there's good and bad to that. Like there's good because I have a very much like can do attitude, and so does Sarah for that matter. Like you stepped up and slayed, but there were parameters outside of like, does that give us enough time to sell tickets, that were part of the decision making process, which was, what is the upcoming schedule like? What would July look like? And July wasn't looking good from a scheduling perspective. And also the looking at the antsiness, if you will, that I was energetically feeling from my clients, and realizing like it doesn't work to wait 8 weeks to do this or 12 weeks to do this. Like part of the desire to get this done and do it now was to really better our best, excel, do the right thing for our clients, even though we had checked all the boxes and like there was equivalent or more coaching involved. It still felt like wanting to solve this problem at a higher level. So really going for that. So to pick up then, we were in this 3-day training, and I will give them lots of credit for wanting, like putting on an in-depth training. It was a little lower level than what our team needed in terms of data and information, but I think they were trying to speak to a lot of different levels. And I think people newer to putting on events probably gained a huge amount from that experience. So a little data point for you all listening in, we educated ourselves. Like this is something I do as a practice. Like this is like someone else has specialized knowledge. I want specialized knowledge. I don't have it. I'm willing to pay for it. I'm willing to get my team trained on it. Like I'm going to invest the time and energy, and I'm going to then put it through our lens, because we do have a lot of experience putting on live events. Like what's working here, what's not. So that's like a little data point. Hopefully people are taking in what we're sharing in this training, and doing the same thing, or people who came to our virtual event doing the same thing. So some of the things that we noticed and shifted for our virtual event, and then I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Sarah, because I know you're going to have a lot of input on this as well, was, my team was like done after 3 or 4 hours. Like part of it was the level of the kind of teaching and how interested you were in it and whether that was engaging. So we understood that you needed to, like, you have to have a different energy level and really bring it, which I think we do when we teach. That's me talking about myself in the third person, but like that we decided 8, 9, 10 hour days were just not viable from a virtual event perspective. Like my team was irritated as F. Okay. Like was frustrated, irritated. There was a lot of complaining going on behind the scenes about how it was being run, the lack of staying on schedule, the lack of significant breaks. What were some of the other things that you were challenged with that we really like then went into problem solving mode in terms of how we would approach it differently?
Yeah. So some of the things that I noticed with their event, where again, like I don't want to discount their event. We did learn a lot there, but definitely too fluffy for us, and often a good sign that it's when it's too fluffy for us, it's probably way too fluffy for our audience, because I think our woman doesn't enjoy a bunch of fluff. Too fluffy. The being off a schedule and not providing a schedule ahead of time drove me bonkers, because I knew that I had some things that I needed to work on around that, and I didn't know when I could do that. So I didn't know when the breaks were, and I didn't know when we were going to stop a session, and when we did, or like they had a tech session, say at the end of the day, and tech was something that was really important for us to learn from them, and they had an excellent session on it. But they waited until the end of the day and they didn't have a schedule out beforehand. So our person who was handling the tech had to miss that session. So, having the schedule out ahead of time is really important. With the frustration level, I think a lot of our team was also hangry in addition, because we didn't have a lot of breaks in between. So that adds to everybody's frustration when you haven't had food, because you can't step away like, oh, I don't know what they're doing next. I don't want to miss it, which is great to, sort of create that, like, I don't want to miss what's next. But at the same time, you need to have breaks scheduled in there, which was something that we were very cognizant of when we were making our own schedule, is making sure that people not only had time to move, but also time to go check an email quick, or, go take a bio break, or whatever they need to do in their breaks. And then they knew that when those were, and we stayed on schedule.
Absolutely. So that was really important to us. We put the schedule on the dashboard for the event. We had breaks. We brought in two of my fabulous clients who are in the movement world, if you will, a yoga teacher and a fitness teacher, to lead some movement breaks that were optional. We made those optional so that people, if they wanted to go chill for 15 minutes and clear their brain, their mind, or they needed to talk to their kids or make a phone call, that they understood that was not, they weren't like, we weren't creating FOMO there. Like that was an optional thing. And then I think the other thing about staying on schedule was really important. That is, we worked very hard behind the scenes to stay on schedule. So that is something that at any event is critical. But one of the things that we did with the virtual event was we also saw that, so one of the problems that we wanted to solve for ourselves with the virtual event was around networking and connection and community. Because a lot of the reasons people come to the Unstoppable Women's Income Breakthrough Summits are because they're meeting other like-minded women, driven, ambitious, really going for more, wanting to understand the laws, intellectuals and doers, right? People into personal development, entrepreneurs, and women in corporate, and they want these like-minded people. And how do you make those connections when it's virtual and you're not talking in line in the bathroom, right? And you're not sitting, like we always do lunch. We provide lunch for everyone, which is great. It's a huge value add for our events, because then people, they don't have to rush off site and lose time trying to find a place to eat. They're sitting in the room and they get to meet these women. So how do we emulate that for a virtual event? And so they did have these workshop sessions, workshop sessions,
Breakout sessions,
yeah, breakout rooms. And they just automatically put people in breakout rooms. So you were with new people each time, which was interesting, but also didn't quite work for our model. So I think we did a really great innovation, which was day one, we had everyone doing workshop breaks together, like the same group, whenever we did a workshop break, work together. And then day two, it was a different group, but they got to work together in all the workshopping sessions. throughout the day, and the same for day 3. So people really built up rapport and relationships. And I bring this up because we were talking about timing, and in order to do enough of the workshopping so that people could really lock in the learning and also make connections, we had to break up the teaching multiple times. And so we ended up, like, I spent a bunch of time figuring out, okay, so if there's these number of workshopping breaks and they're each X amount long, and they were different amounts, and like what were the different segments? That was a math equation I had to do, and it was a little bit challenging, I have to say. But then the innovation, and this is a good technique for people, I think, to take away. One, spend the time to do that so that you stay on track. And then Ashley, who was with me at the time, had an iPad timer, and we very soon realized that I didn't know which section that was in reference to, and whether I was ahead or it was 3 things, or like it, for some reason I couldn't track it. Seems kind of straightforward. Like she was going to, every time it switched, she was going to change it. But somehow I couldn't track it, especially if I was ahead or behind. Like if I finished the teaching early, it was like a little bit of a nightmare. And she brilliantly came up with like classic, super easy, low tech Post-it notes, right? And she put like Post-it note, 15 minutes teaching, 4 minutes workshopping. Like, and I had all these Post-it notes up, old school, but it totally worked. And it kept us, I mean, I think we were late, Sarah, maybe a couple minutes, 1 or 2 times. Like it really kept us on schedule.
Yeah, we did a great job of staying on schedule, which, like I said, makes me happy, because that was something that was driving me nuts with that other virtual event that we went to. And like, we can't be 20 minutes past, but we were a couple minutes past on a few things. But for the most part, we stayed very on schedule, and huge props to Ashley for that, because, you know, that's part of a live event, any live event, live or in person or virtual, I should say, is flexibility. Like, hey, we have a little bit of a problem here. How do we solve this right now?
Absolutely. So, and to that end, like we thought 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours was insanity for a virtual event. Now, I have so much teaching. It's an interesting evaluation for us for our next virtual event, which is coming up. It will be happening in November 6th, 7th, and 8th. If you guys want to come, please join us.
We'll put links in the show notes.
There you go. Thanks. Sarah's always on it. Like we did 4.5 hours of teaching with significant workshopping and not overdone breaks, but 2 solid 15-minute breaks. And then we did a half an hour break and then a VIP session. And I think we'll probably keep to more or less the same amount of time. We might do a slightly longer day, maybe 5 hours or 5.5 hours, slightly longer. Do the lunch maybe a little bit differently. We were like put a lunch in there and see if we can do some sort of kind of lunch Q&A, lunch and learn, to make it more casual, but more like an actual lunch. We'll see how that works out. But so to close the loop on this, we went and found specialized knowledge. There was a ton of information in that event that was not particularly useful, lots that was. And we took copious notes on sort of like what not to do, which is important as well. It's not a diss of other people, but like they gave us great ideas also. Like, let's talk about some of the great ideas we got. Swag boxes, right? We freaking love swag and you should see our marketing meetings. We spend way too much time talking about swag. Like swag is not what sells. Swag is not what builds the company, but we're obsessed with swag. Like we loved putting together crazy, beautiful things for our clients. And we actually only do swag for our VIP clients at in-person events. But we decided to make it a little like more connected. We were trying to build the connection. So we did swag boxes, and that was something that I got as an idea. And do you have commentary on? So here's my commentary, and then I'm going to hand it to. We spent too much time on it, and I don't want to give it up because I love it. And we needed to get that. Like now we have that dialed down, and we can do swag probably with switching out a few things here and there, and it's pretty awesome. It would be pretty awesome. But like overall, like if I had to make a very clear business decision, I would be like, no swag. We spend too much time. Like if you're doing a 3.5 week planning cycle, you probably shouldn't spend all that time on swag, you know? Okay. So what about you, Sarah? What's your take on that?
Uh, yeah, I mean, like we were first talking about the swag box when we were listening to the virtual event. I signed up personally for the virtual event that we attended very late, so I literally got mine like a week ago. But it was a lovely box. From our side, though, like I think for a virtual event, personally, and you know how I feel about this, was that it was just such a nice touch to connect the physical. Because you can't right now, like with COVID, you can't reach out and touch people, you can't shake hands, you can't hug each other, and we can't be in the same room with you when you're teaching. Even most of your team, I'm here in Florida with you and Charlotte. Like personally, that sucks, but like we'll make it work. But swag is such a great way to connect that. In my personal opinion, we do spend a boatload of time making sure that we get those swag boxes right, though, and like it comes from a place of love. Like what is our woman going to really love? Like what's going to resonate? What's she going to use? What's she going to like? What's going to just light her up when she opens that box? And with our time frame, it was a little extra challenging because it's one of those things we like to spend a lot of time on, making sure that we've got it exactly right. And then time frame combined with shipping, combined with COVID, whew, but we made it work.
Totally. And so like to your point about like what would our women want? That was such a like we had such conversations about like we could do this and then everyone would roll their eyes and be like, no one wants that. That's going in the trash, right? Like from an ecological perspective, we weren't really interested in just filling it with stuff. We wanted it to be useful, cool, engaging stuff. And then there were certain things that were cool and useful. And from a business perspective, you have to look and go, wow, I'm not sending this 3-pound thing to everyone because the shipping on that is going to be insanity. That we have to come up with another idea. And so really like honing the parameters on it, and then what goes into the VIP swag box versus the regular swag box, and why are we doing it like this? And we had this great idea to do a signature Unstoppable Woman cocktail, right, with a little printed cocktail card that everyone could like cheers in the VIP after party. Well, it turns out you can't ship alcohol. Duh. Okay, so our cute little like mixers that we were going to send, like that didn't fly, right? So anyways, there was a lot of course correction that had to happen along those lines. And I think both of us are saying it was worth it. We wouldn't change it. But it did take up a huge amount of time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. But next time, just like you said, we can do it faster.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that goes into this mix is roles and responsibilities and staffing and having the right team and enough team. And it so happened that I have a new assistant who had just started like the week before that we decided to do this. She was thrown into the fire, right? Like it was just like, boom, here, go make all of this happen. And she was in charge of packing the swag boxes, making sure we had everything in stock. And there was a lot to do. So if you're thinking, so from a teaching, coaching perspective, if you're thinking about doing swag boxes, you have to think about all the costs involved, shipping. And if you're shipping overseas, you need to consider that. And the weight of things is important. Who's your woman? Is it going to be useful? Is it hugely value add there? And like the branding on it, we wanted to make it beautiful. Like that's part of our image and our brand and what we represent is like appreciating the beauty in life. And so we wanted to make it beautiful. And then you need to make sure that you have people in your life that you're not staying up until 3 a.m. filling swag boxes. Like that's not a good use of your time if you are the head of the organization or you're the presenter. Like you need to, if you're DIYing this and you don't have a team, you need to like make some good decisions in terms of what's the value add. yes, stretch yourself, but really understand that we have a team of people who are supporting this event. So let's talk about that next. Okay, so talking about team and roles, super, super important to get abundantly clear about this ahead of time. We have an amazing team. I just want to acknowledge how freaking awesome our team is. They're smart, they're on it, there's zero drama. They are always coming up with like how they can better them how they can better their best, like how we can improve, and everyone is all in, and it's such a that's such a place of appreciation and gratitude that I have. And for those of you who are running your own business, if you don't have a great team, let's talk about how to create a great team at some point. Ask me that question, because there are no accidents in this universe. Nothing happens by chance or luck. It's not a random universe that we live in. I have an amazing team because of all the work that I've done for the last few years to create an environment that attracts amazing people, and also the standards that I hold for myself. I don't let myself off the hook and then blame other people for not showing up. Like, I hold a super high standard, and I had to do a ton of work internally on my emotional set point, my mental set point around working with other people. And it doesn't happen by accident. And you grow an incredible team by showing up differently. And I actually got an amazing compliment from someone. Our tech crew, Crescent Events, does all the big name events. Well, I shouldn't say all, but many of the big name events in the transformational coaching industry. And Matthias, who just killed it, slayed for us, and was a dream to work with. So big shout out to Matthias, big shout out to Crescent Events. They did an awesome job, and we're going to go into more detail on that in a bit, and why I think it's important to hire great, great at the top of their game, excellent people, and not to mess around with that. But that said, at the end of, I think it was day 1 or day 2, Matthias was talking about how great our team was and how great it was to work together, and that it was a testament to my leadership. And I'm not too proud to reject that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I received that. I received that compliment because I've done the heavy lifting around it, and I've turned around my thinking so that I might get a little stressed here or there about something, but the way that I interact with my team is 100% full responsibility and full respect. And so there were little things that weren't going well. I think I mentioned this earlier around, I didn't get the timing right, and I wasn't communicating, and I was like, like, I don't want to go over. I want to respect my clients. How do we solve this problem? And there was like a little moment where I said to Ash, I was like, "Hey, this is freaking stressing me out. We need to clean this up." And I had intensity, that level of intensity behind the energy behind it, but it wasn't, as a teaching moment here, it wasn't a crucifixion of her or a make wrong of her. It was like, what's happening here? This isn't working. We gotta fix this, and we gotta fix this in the next 5 minutes because we're going live again. And I don't want that to be in my head. That's the personal responsibility piece. I don't want that in my head. I don't want to be thinking about how thrown off I am by not understanding what the timer reflects, right? And she came up with a brilliant, like that, solution of these little post-it notes. And it seems so obvious, like, of course, that's what you do. But you don't know that until you do it. And she had zero drama around it as well. And so, and then the event flows well, and it's not Bridezilla, right? It's not Eventzilla, right? And that's not how everyone works in this industry or any other industry, that there are people who are rageaholics. There are people who talk a good game to the camera, but behind the scenes, um, don't treat their people well, or their people are running scared. Like, I have zero tolerance for like fear in my world, right? And my world is my business. And I do not want to be someone who is creating fear in my team. Yes, I'm the boss. Yes, I'm going to give you feedback if things aren't going well, right? Like, it's a results driven company, and we put that in our sort of upfront mission statement. But that doesn't mean you don't treat people with respect. So just a note there. Events are stressful, right? It's like you're on. It's like the camera. You don't get 5 takes. The camera's rolling. Here we go. Everything better be in place and rock, because we're rocking and rolling. Okay, that we don't have like zero tolerance really for mistakes. And yet mistakes are always going to come up. Things need to be tweaked. What's your attitude about it? And so you also have to recognize that it's going to be a higher level of intensity for everyone on the team. And do you want to speak to that, Sarah? I think it's important to have your input on sort of, because I put you guys under a lot of stress, right? It's like 3.5 weeks, let's get this done. Like that on the one hand, it's kind of fun. On the other hand, it's like, big middle finger to your boss. Like, what the hell, right? So why don't you speak to that?
Yeah. So first of all, I know that I want to back up to where you said, like, yeah, I will take the kudos for that's my leadership, because it really is. Like, I've worked for bosses before where that's not the case. And I've had this conversation with you before. People don't quit jobs. They quit bosses. Like, that's usually the number one reason why someone leaves a job is they don't get along with their boss. But not an issue here, because here's the thing with you, like a couple of things. One, I can always tell you, like, I don't think we can do this in 3 weeks. I think this is a bad idea. And that's okay. Like, I know that I can say, like, I have some concerns about the timing, and that's okay. And here's from the other side, when you say, hey, let's do it anyway, like, okay, well, let's do it. Let's go knock it out. Let's go kick ass. But
and
as far as
let me speak to that, because and Sarah then said, okay, what's got to give, right? You came back to me and were like, if we're doing this and I'm all in, I'm good. But I need you to know this, might fall through, or we need to come up with another plan. And we actually, hired, gave people more hours, hired more people, right? As a direct result of you not being in fear about saying, what you needed to say. Like, you want to excel, you want to do a freaking kick-ass job, set me up for success, here's how, right?
Right, exactly. And again, that goes back to your leadership. Like, you can't do that everywhere. You can't say, like, and it's unfortunate, because you should be able to, because it works in everybody's benefit when your staff, when your team can come to you and say, like, okay, I'm ready, I'm here to show up for this, but here's what I need for this to happen. Never, ever, ever, ever a problem with you. So like, I personally want to give you kudos for that. And I would imagine that most of our team would agree. And it's always nice, like, even when it's like, hey, this thing is bothering me, do you want to talk about it? Yes, I do. Let's just talk about it right now and get this knocked out. But when it comes to events, like you said, like when it's live and it's rolling and you're on screen, and we don't always have the ability to be like, hey, Amira, what do I do here? You've empowered us enough too to be able to say, oh, we did make a mistake here. How are we going to fix it right now? Like, we're just going to make a judgment call. We're going to fix this thing. We're going to fix that thing. We're rolling behind the scenes while you're up there as well. And that's because we've been empowered to do so.
That's such a great point, Sarah, that I hadn't actually even thought about. So thank you for bringing that up. The fact that you're not in fear, you don't think, oh, I can't make this decision because she's a rageaholic and she's gonna, like, well, I mean, there are people who are like they're going to rip you a new one, right? And
right.
If that's at stake, you won't be empowered to make an on the spot call. And the ramification for the company is, if people can't make on the spot calls, for the owner, for the CEO, for the leadership team, then they're stuck making every single decision, and their energy is spent on all the minutia instead of like empowering their team to make decisions. And then things happen, right? I often talk about closing the gap on time, and this allows the company to close the gap on time. Like you're able to like make the decision, and if you're in fear and you can't make that decision, then it seems like an obvious one, but it will delay the scaling of the company overall. So
Right. It makes you lose momentum on so many levels. You lose momentum if you're directly speaking with a potential client or a client. You lose that momentum where it's like, oh, I don't know, let me go ask. And then we lose the momentum when we do have to go ask. And again, when you're making every single decision, like that's no good for anybody.
correct. And another thing from a tech communication team perspective that I think would be helpful for people to know is that we had a very good communication plan set up that allowed for that kind of Q&A, or back and forth. So just so everyone knows what we use, and people use different services. Some people use WhatsApp. Am I saying that right? WhatsApp? Okay.
Yep.
I always want to say WhatsApp, but WhatsApp as like the team communication channel. Some people use Slack. We use Skype, and it's super helpful and super important. Everyone has it on their phone. We had a team group event, Skype group, and then Sarah has me on a freaking auto dial, so she's Skyping me, and I'm doing the responsible thing, which is during breaks checking to make sure, like, if they need anything, that they've got it. Okay. And then also if I'm having downloads that I want to share with them, they have it. But that's really helpful. And it's super critical, even more critical with a virtual event than an in-person event, because, I'm in the room with Matthias, who is from Crescent Events, Ashley, my personal assistant, and she's our podcast video assistant as well. And turns out she's an event assistant. She jumped in. She's new on our team, 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks now. But she basically came on right when we decided to do this and was like thrown.
Yeah, we literally were interviewing her in the middle of the other event that we were at when we were making the decision to do our own event. So
that's correct. Yep. So we're like, hey, how comfortable do you feel with video? How comfortable do you feel? Right. And then we had Fran, the woman who we hired to do MC work, in the room, but everyone else, social media, marketing, branding, customer support, everyone else was, and copy, right? Our language communication, everyone else is spread out and not in the same room. So having good communication is exceedingly important.
And I think that's such a perfect segue into the roles and the responsibilities, because having the set roles and responsibilities ahead of time really, really helped us with very efficient communication. So if it's like, hey, the breakout room isn't working the way we expected, Wendy, can you help? This piece of technology isn't working, Matthias. Like all the time, like I was listening for your sound quality, Matthias, on my end, I can't hear her. She's muffled. She's got her earring clicking the mic, like, all that kind of stuff. Or like, Ashley's in the room with you. Ashley, at the next section for questions, can you call attention to this person? Social media people, hey, I took these screenshots. Can you make sure that something good happens with these? And having those set roles and responsibilities allows us to communicate so much more efficiently, especially when we are not in the same room.
I think that's great. And I just pulled up so that I can share with people how we divvied up the roles and responsibilities. So if you have a bigger team, things would be different. If you have a smaller team, things would be different. So fundamentally, my role is founder CEO. It's everything. But at the event, day of, it's teaching. And actually, Sarah put on here, I love this, Sarah, thank you. Talent, teach and be awesome, right? So I'm looking at that now. And that's that gives you a little bit of a flavor of how we actually talk to each other behind the scenes, right? That this is our our communication style. Okay. And then, Ashley did on-site support. So she's doing food and beverage for everyone, making sure I'm fed, my clothes are steamed, all of that sort of stuff. And she's doing behind the scenes photos and videos, and she's running the schedule. Okay. That's her role. Not a thousand other things, but that was her role. We got really clear on that. And we probably had multiple conversations just in terms of bringing someone new in and talking about roles and responsibilities. The core team had many conversations about it. And then the week of the actual event, we did a run through and conversation about the schedule, and we got very clear about roles and responsibilities. So that was a multiple touch point conversation so that there's no misunderstanding about what people are on board to do. Communication is so key, guys. Sarah was in charge of the chats on the live chat on the event, managing Q&A and social media oversight. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that role was for you so people understand more about what that took and maybe some tips on how to make that work more better?
Yeah. So handling the chat, even in a little bit of a smaller group, which is what we had, that's definitely one person is it would have been better with two, but we made it work because I had private chats going all through, as well as just the initial, like the group chat for everybody. And that's, making sure if people have questions, making sure if people are stuck somewhere, if they can't get in the dashboard, if they need to download slides, if they're having a technical issue, if they can't hear you, all of those things are all the things that I was answering. And in the meantime,
Let's pause right there because that was something that I didn't realize. Like that was a lesson that I learned from this event. Like I didn't realize how much like full on 100% that was going to take of your mental energy and just time. And you actually knew that in advance. And that's why you were like, I want to bring on Shayna on our team and give her more hours to do the social because I'm not going to be able to, because I think, oh, she can do all of it, right? She's a unicorn, right? And you were very clear with me, like, actually, if you want me to do this well, this is how this needs to look. And I was like, okay, good argument. Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And bringing in that person to help with the posting side of social was an absolute just godsend because being able to shift some things into her, I was looking for those things like, hey, when we're looking at the Zoom video minute, whatever, like look there, that's a great snip. When we're looking at comments, here's some that I took out for you. Here's some good ideas. She and I brainstormed a bunch of things that we could post on beforehand. So like I was helping her find them as we went, but not having to actually go worry about making sure that those got posted and that they look good. Like she'd send them to me beforehand for approval, but otherwise like I didn't have to worry about it. And there's no way I could have done both. And the only reason I know that, I knew that going in was because of the virtual coffees that we've done, which have significantly less people. And those can keep me pretty mentally on even the entire time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And from an up leveling, like always scaling, always closing the gap, always running to the stairs to the next level. Like my ears are like my dog ears are up. You're in this conversation, you're telling me actually it would have been great to have two people there. And I know that we're doing another virtual event in November. We need to figure out who on the team is going to support you, or do we need another team person? What would that look like? And so I start the problem solving. Like that's the little tidbit. And then I start the problem solving, and Sarah and I will have another conversation or two about like, okay, well, what does social need to look like? And who would that be? And like, how would we divvy up that role if someone's on chat, two people on chat, what the communication flow is going to be? And is it do we have the right person on our team, or is that a new person? And we don't want like someone new coming on board a day before. It doesn't work. It's not, you can make it work, but it's not as seamless and the person won't know our brand and what we stand for and our mission and our perspective if we bring them on too soon. So this is the kind of way that, we do lessons learned in triangulation directly after we've had 2 conversations about it, one directly after the event. That's another thing when we get to the PAG, that's programmatic glance for anyone who doesn't know what that means. It's the moment by moment schedule, right? Like we put, lessons learned at the end of team meeting, at the end of each day. And yes, people are spent, but we need to know that for the next day. And then you need to know the lessons learned as an aggregate for the whole event. And those keep coming in and we keep tracking them and they go into our project plan. But like, this is another lessons learned. Okay, we need to do this earlier, right? Okay.
Right, exactly.
Okay, that's a wrap for episode 1 on how to plan an awesome virtual event in 3.5 weeks. So glad you joined us for that. Please join us for episode 2, where there will be more behind the scenes tips and strategies on how to learn from our lessons and rock out that event. Thank you so much for joining us and for being a part of the Unstoppable Woman movement. I want to let you know that we've got a ton of free resources for you for scaling your business at theunstoppablewoman.com/free stuff. Please go ahead and check those out. And we'd also love your help in getting the message out. Share this podcast with all the unstoppable women in your life, your friends, your colleagues, your business besties. Please do that. And if you're game, we'd super duper duper appreciate a review on iTunes as well. Thanks so much and be unstoppable.